Hey, Sweat.
What's good, everybody? Welcome to another episode of A Fresh Perspective with your favorite conservatarian, Jeff Charles. And y'all know who I have on tonight. I have a very special guest, and she is impatient. She's ready to get started. So I'm just going to introduce her. Welcome, Miss Eliza Bleu. What's up?
Hello, Jeff. If people don't know, Jeff and I are secretly friends. And so when somebody's friends with me or when I'm friends with someone, I talk to them pretty direct. I'm like, Jeff, let's go. It's time.
Yeah, y'all don't know. She was cussing me out and everything. It was pretty hurtful.
I was not cussing you out. Look, come on now. We don't need to start rumors.
But since it's Eliza, I allow it.
I don't need to get canceled tonight. Maybe tomorrow.
No, they're always trying to cancel you, but I won't let them cancel you. They don't get to cancel you.
Thank you. I appreciate actually you've stood up for me a lot online. Anytime anybody's come at me a little, sideways, you've always stood up for me, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, honestly, it doesn't make sense. I mean, with some people, I understand why they come at them. Even if I like the person, I understand why they might piss people off. But with what you do, I mean, you're an advocate against human trafficking. You work with survivors. Why would anybody hate on that? Let's see if you can answer that question for me. Like, why would anybody hate on that? I don't get it.
Well, there's a lot of money at stake. And my voice is authentic and unifying and doesn't really have any political party or any agenda other than sort of solving human rights violations. Because nobody pays me to tweet, nobody pays me for my message. It's really authentic. It's just survivor speaking from her heart. That's what scares them, I think. I think that's what scares them. There's a lot of money there. There's traffickers on Twitter. There's abusers on Twitter. There's pimps and pedophiles on Twitter. There's a lot of money there. There's people pretending to be people that they're not. My own traffickers are on Twitter. This is a fact. So, and I speak out against folks that just don't want to be spoken out against. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So
and it can take a lot of things.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, because I mean, every single attack I've seen against you has been completely dishonest. And by now, I'm able to kind of tell when people are bullshitting or not without having to do tons of research. What are the most prevalent lies that people tell about you, just so you can debunk them here?
Well, the latest attacks. Actually, this is kind of funny. The latest attack is that I'm friends with Matt Gaetz. The evidence for this, or that I was somehow buddying up to Matt Gaetz. The evidence for this was a tweet. I believe it was a tweet that Scott Adams put out saying something about Parler. I said, I joined Parler. This is the evidence of me being buddy with Matt Gaetz. It's a tweet. I have the evidence, by the way. It's a tweet. And I said, I joined Parler. I'm at Eliza Bleu on there too. You can tell that the tweet either came from Scott Adams or Gaetz. And then, so I was going through one of them. So all three of us were in the conversation, and I was literally just shouting out my own Parler account.
And so they use that to make up this narrative about you being buddy with Matt Gaetz.
Correct. And then, one of the other, a little bit more, I guess, dangerous, and some of the more really just ugly ones. I've seen some people saying that I was in Atlanta holding a march against massage parlors and spray painting logos on the side of massage parlors. The only thing that's factual about any of that is that I was in Atlanta. This is a documented event. I was the keynote speaker at a Miles Through Time and Tesla event. We raised $10,000 for our rescue. It was the longest electric car parade in history. It was a Guinness Book of World Records breaker, world record breaker. And it was also sponsored by Westin Hotels as well. I was the keynote, and it's well documented. And I didn't, because of the lockdowns and everything, I went to the hookah bar while I was in Atlanta. I was there with my best friend, Amanda, and I went to a hookah bar, and I went to the botanical garden there. So I was not there doing anything nefarious, I was really just there hanging out with a lot of folks from the Tesla community and Miles Through Time, which is a car museum. Yeah, they get pretty wild.
Did you get to hang out with Elon Musk?
Look, I can't be spilling all my secrets, okay? I can't be spilling all my secrets. No, Elon was not in Atlanta at that time.
Gotcha. Okay, and Matt Gaetz wasn't in Atlanta at that point in time, right? He was still in Florida.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, all right. Just want to make sure,
Yeah, not to my knowledge. There were some of the pageant winners from Atlanta and Georgia. There were some beauty queens there. They were amazing. Of course, the Tesla community was really amazing. And the thing that's so amazing is that the Tesla folks from around the world have stood by me even after that event and been really supportive. So it's pretty cool.
That's good. I mean, and it's awesome that they would even support a cause like yours. I mean, especially right now when we've got corporations jumping onto causes for purely political reasons. And I don't want to get too much into that, regardless of what people think of that. But it's nice to see that there's an organization that can just want to do some good without it being about partisan politics.
It was very organic. Yeah, it was a very organic exchange. And so I'm just grateful that they heard me out. And it was a really good time. And I'm also grateful that during the pandemic, while everybody's locked down, we still found a way to raise money for children that have been trafficked. So, I mean, can you think of anything better? That's awesome. I mean, there were people in their Tesla watching a live stream of my speech. My speech was outside. So by no means was I there protesting anything. It was the opposite.
Well, technically, you were protesting human trafficking. I mean, that's what your mission is. I mean, and that's a worthy cause.
Yeah, it wasn't a protest.
I know it wasn't a protest.
Raising awareness.
Yeah, like you're advocating against it, right? But yeah, you went out there with a
I don't know. It wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't that. It was nothing to do with what folks say. So yeah, they come up with some pretty egregious lies, and all it shows me is that I'm probably right on the target, and that I should keep doing exactly what I'm doing. It fuels my fire.
Awesome. Cool. So let's get into it. I mean, the stories that we're going to talk about all have something to do with human trafficking, but I see somebody in the chat has already gotten my first question. And before we get into it, I would like you to give the definition of human trafficking and also discuss what the difference is between human trafficking and human smuggling, because people get that mixed up quite a bit.
Great question. So human trafficking is force, fraud, or coercion for the sale of labor or sex. It also includes the black market sale of human organs, illegal adoption, and child soldiers as well. And in some cases, child marriage.
Okay.
Not all cases.
And so
sorry, I've second podcast today. I'm dragging. So the difference between, this is like one of my favorite questions. What's the difference between human smuggling and human trafficking? Uh-oh, did I lose you, Jeff? Did I lose you, Jeff? Why do I feel like I'm on right now and he is not? I hope I'm not on. Oh my gosh. Jeff. Oh no. Am I still live? Oh, there you are.
All right, cool.
Boom, done. Okay. Are we still on YouTube?
So hold on one second.
Okay.
I know. Okay. I'm fixing it right now.
No worries.
What? And now it kicked me out. Oh my God.
Are we still on YouTube?
Yes, I think so. My camera just went off. Oh my goodness, this is bugging me.
It looks like I can see a part of you. Like it looks like it's pointed down or something.
Yeah, the problem is that I'm using an external camera and it's not working anymore for some reason. So I'm going to take this off and hope that this settles down. Oh my goodness.
You came back kind of digitally. That was pretty dope.
Wait, now there's two of me. Oh my goodness.
The best part is, we good?
Wait, no, now you're. All right, is this better? Nope, I'm still echoing. Okay. Is that nope? Still not. Is that better? What is wrong with this thing? This has never happened to me.
It's the redacted trying to make sure that we can't talk. Told you they were after me. Well, it could be worse. I could be streaming on YouTube by myself. Well, I guess I could keep talking about human trafficking. So if this is live, because I can't tell if it's live, so I'm just going to keep talking. So the difference between human smuggling and human trafficking is human smuggling is a consensual relationship between an individual to cross a border or to get them to another place. A smuggler is a consensual relationship. So you're paying a smuggler or a coyote to get you, in this case, let's talk about the border, across the border. So you back, Jeff? I'm going to make so much fun of him for this. The thing, you back?
All right. Guess who's back?
Guess who's
back again. Jeff is back. All right. Okay, I have no idea what was going on there. This has never once happened in the history of the show. Like I've had technical issues before, but not like this. So I'm thinking it's the people that hate on you all the time. They hack into the system. It's the redacted. So, but they didn't succeed. So I apologize, everybody. But let's continue. You're explaining the difference between human trafficking and smuggling.
Yeah. I kind of just kept talking because I wasn't sure if I was still live. I was like,
I saw you.
So awkward. Like, okay. And then I was like, well, I guess I could just keep talking. So the difference between human trafficking and human smuggling is smuggling is a consensual relationship between an individual to cross a border to get them somewhere that they can't get on their own. So you could pay a coyote or a smuggler to get you across the border. So that's human smuggling. It's a different crime. It's a crime against a border. Human trafficking involves force, fraud, or coercion. The deal where they get sort of intertwined a little bit is because human smuggling can turn into human trafficking. So someone can actually pay someone that they think is going to smuggle them and can inadvertently get trafficked. So that is probably one of the most heartbreaking ways that human trafficking can occur, is when someone thinks, wow, I have this great relationship with someone, they're going to get me where I want to go, and ultimately they end up getting trafficked.
Yeah, I've read a bunch of stories where people will think that they're paying a coyote to smuggle them in so that they can find better work, and they end up working, but it's forced labor, or they'll pay them like a pittance, but basically they're still forced. A lot of times they'll take their passports, or they'll basically blackmail them with, we'll call immigration on you, or you don't even speak the language, so you can't even get around. You can't even tell people what we're doing to you. And I've heard of people working as maids or on farms. And one thing that you mentioned to me that I didn't know, it was that forced labor is more prevalent than sex trafficking. I always thought it was the other way around.
So just the data and statistics that we have right now, there is a caveat. The border crisis is changing. So I'm anticipating the numbers that we have. Somebody actually asked me on Twitter today, I saw a comment scroll through, what's the number of human trafficking at the border right now? There's no way that we have any way to tell right now exactly the number. We will not have those numbers for a very long time. It's just not the way it works. It's very difficult to get those numbers. Unfortunately, what we're seeing right now at the border, we will not know long-term the effects as far as human trafficking is concerned. We only know about the smuggling right now. Does that make sense? And we can't lump in everyone that has traveled across the border as a human trafficking victim, because it's just not accurate, and it's not accurate by the law, unless force, fraud, or coercion for the sale of labor, sex, black market human organs, child soldiers, unless those things are included, that is not human trafficking. The difficulty when we're talking about the border is folks are promised a dream to come here. I feel in a lot of cases, it isn't the person coming across the border's fault. I feel like they've been given a false promise. Unfortunately, in the United States, we're not sending a clear message to folks like, hey, if you come here, you could be put in a situation where you are sexually exploited, where you are exploited for forced labor. Even if someone's paid a small amount, if you're working a 20-hour shift for $5, that's labor trafficking. That is not our standard in the United States. Where there are some gray areas is you have things like T visas and things like that, where folks can come into the United States and work legally, but not be a United States citizen on specific visas. So there is a lot of nuance there. But when we're talking about the border, we're not talking about that. My fear is that when folks are given a false promise, when you take away the FBI background screening, when you take away some of these protections that would be protecting children from going into homes of predators, it will increase the risk of trafficking long term.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, I used to have the stats on it, but there are a lot, just in general, not necessarily just with this migrant crisis, but in general, there is a lot of trafficking that goes on. And I know my governor, Greg Abbott, he's actually calling for an investigation. So there's going to be, it's probably already started, an investigation into how much this is happening, because they've already discerned that it's happening. But they're trying to find out how much it's happening, how to stop it. And unfortunately, this is a growing industry. It's a growing criminal enterprise. I want
to let folks know one other thing too. Human trafficking happens in Mexico and stays in Mexico as well. It's not like you have to come to the United States to be trafficked. Also, just some of the statistics that we have are 77%, according to the United States. Trafficking in Persons Report 2019. I haven't looked to see if they've updated this, but 77% of victims of human trafficking are trafficked from within their country of origin. So like within their country of residence. So I would be a perfect example. I'm a United States citizen. I was trafficked from within the United States. So even though like I said, a lot of these numbers will change because of the increase. My fear, even though children are always my biggest fear, right? When we talk about human trafficking for either sex or labor, is that it will drastically increase our labor trafficking here in the United States. I think a lot of what we see at the border will definitely increase our labor trafficking in the United States.
So here's a question. Whether it's domestic or whether it's an immigrant that comes and is exploited, how do these people usually get away with it? Or actually, let me ask this. How do people usually get out of it? How do people escape from it?
Are you talking about a non-United States citizen or a United States citizen?
Both. Do non-citizen and then citizen after that.
Yeah. So each survivor's story is a little bit different. Not very many make it out. The United Nations has projected that 0.04% of survivors of human trafficking are ever identified. It's one of the reasons why I'm so vocal. I'm very grateful for my life, and I'm very grateful to be out here. So it's very, very difficult to get out. I don't think folks really fully understand how deadly the lifestyle truly is, how deadly human trafficking can be. In the eyes of an abuser, you are seen as trash. You are seen as a product. You are seen as illicit drugs. You are seen as illegal guns. You are seen as black market oil. You know what I mean? You are not seen like a human. You are seen like a product. So therefore, if you become a liability, you are disposable. So let's start off by saying that the chance of making it out alive is slim to none. The human trafficking hotline is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. A lot of survivors call the human trafficking hotline, which is amazing, especially, when they're in situations. Some survivors are discovered through law enforcement, other things like that. That happens as well. There are many different ways that a survivor can have the opportunity to be free. And we try to give them as many opportunities as possible, right? Mm-hmm. Now, when you're talking about someone that's not a United States citizen, that brings it up another notch. There is the human trafficking hotline in Mexico. It's a Mexican human trafficking hotline. Also, our United States human trafficking hotline speaks 200 plus languages. The difficulty is that a lot of times if you reach out, you could be, a trafficker will instill a fear in you that if you reach out for help, you will be deported, you won't be believed. There's so many things in there. And you also have to think, like, does this person have a phone? Does this person even know where they are? Does this person even know where they are? They might not even know that they're in the United States. If you've been drugged, if you've been, not given enough food, if you've been kept in a place where you've been transported and not allowed to see where you are, you might not even know what country you're in. And we have seen cases like that as well.
Yeah, especially if you don't speak the language. And that's one of the ways that these people are victimized. So you brought up the hotline, but one thing that I've always told people is that, it's so prevalent, especially in certain states, like in Texas, that you very well could be living next door to a slave. Can you give people an idea of how they might be able to recognize when this has happened? I know it's not always possible, but are there certain signs that should be red flags?
So I love that question. And I've been asked that question quite a bit because we know it can happen to anyone, anywhere, anytime, right? It's kind of difficult because if I say, look for bruises, look for burn marks, look for somebody that's unkept, that might not be the case or match reality. Mm-hmm. Also, there are folks that are on the spectrum. So things like not making eye contact doesn't necessarily match. They say like, oh, look for somebody that's not in control of their own, life, or for somebody that doesn't make eye contact. Well, if someone is on the spectrum or has different, not everybody wants to make eye contact. That's not everybody's speed. It doesn't mean that they're being trafficked. So I like to turn the question back around and say, how could a survivor of human trafficking recognize you? Are you open? Do you look like somebody they can trust? If you see someone that you think could be in need, are you going to smile and say, hey, how you doing? If somebody's crying in the bathroom, are you going to say, hey, you need help with anything? Are you open? Or are you looking down at your phone, walking around mad? If I wanted help, would I ask you for help? That's how I say. It's not like we're out here just looking for survivors, because, that gets really dicey too, because, let's say like if you and I got married and adopted a child from a different country, like if they saw the three of us out together, that might look like suspicious, because everybody's different. You can't judge people like that, but what you can do is have an open energy. And if someone is in need, make that clear. The other thing too is on social media, if you're posting things about human trafficking, like the human trafficking hotline, or if generally speaking, you have an open energy to it, survivors will come to you. Someone in will come to you. You will seem like a safe person.
And you've had that happen a lot, haven't you? I thought I saw you tweeting about that a while ago.
So much. Thank God. So much. It was so much I had to close my DMs.
Oh, wow.
Because I'm not set up to be the human trafficking hotline. So in my mind, when a survivor needs help, especially if it's international, it could be life or death, and counting on me to always be on Twitter. Like, I probably won't be on Twitter for the rest of our conversation. Maybe I will. I don't know. But I mean, counting on me to, and then also just for myself, I had to set those healthy boundaries. I'm not set up to be the human trafficking hotline. They're grant funded to do that job. I'm not.
Right.
So I can't be, just for my own mental health, I had to cut. And also there's other things too, like in July 2020, Twitter faced their largest data breach. Actually, I don't know if everybody remembers, but like Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Obama, a lot of folks were hacked and tweeting out I forget what kind of scam it was. And then they had to like lock all blue checks accounts. But, I don't think of Twitter as a completely safe, confidential way to communicate with anyone. I've even told like friends, like even just friends, like this isn't a completely confidential or safe way to talk in DM. I don't want a survivor to tell their deepest, darkest secrets thinking that it's something that's confidential and me not be able to guarantee them that it is.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. And we're going to talk about Twitter a little bit later. The thing that's always bothered me about human trafficking is what you said earlier, that the likelihood of escaping from it is so low. Do you know of anything that governments are doing, whether it's our government or other governments that are doing to try to increase that, or do you even think it's possible to crack down more on this?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we can do. Just being proactive. First and foremost, it always starts with educating the youth. The next generation needs to know. The other thing is just staying a step ahead of abusers. People always say like, I'm very like, I try not to call myself a human trafficking expert because even though other people do, which is fine. But, the crime is constantly changing. By the time we get off this live stream, somebody will have thought of a new and unique way that I've never thought of to traffic and abuse a child or a human being. It's criminal. So they have to stay a step ahead. They're ahead in technology. They're ahead in money. These predators and traffickers are ahead. The cartels are ahead. We are behind the eight ball, to be honest. So always be thinking, anytime you're in a situation, just before it happens, that's a big thing we need to do, is just prevent this before it happens. So that's one of the reasons why I got so adamant about talking about it, because during the lockdowns, I knew, and I was right that predators would be trying to reach children through the digital space. They already were, but like I knew it was going to kick it up like a lot.
It skyrocketed. Yeah.
Skyrocketed. But I knew that folks were going to be desperate, potentially in situations where they could be trafficked for labor or sex. And so that's one of the reasons why I kicked it into high gear. I think that it sounds a little weird, but I almost try to spend more time thinking like an abuser. How would an abuser use the situation to their advantage rather than thinking like a victim? Because I think when you're thinking like that, it's a little bit more proactive. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, to be brutally honest, I want the government involved in this as little as possible. They can't seem to get anything right. And if they wanted to end human trafficking, they could. All the governments could work together to help end it. And a lot of times they are involved as well. So, I mean, can we trust? I mean, come on. It is nice when they provide adequate grant funding for aftercare, but then it puts organizations on in a situation where they have to buy office furniture rather than giving a pregnant survivor a place to stay that night. That's the way grant funding breaks down. So there's a lot of red tape there. There's a lot of red tape there.
Well, yeah, and I like what you said about prevention, because I think this was you again. You were talking about how, when you build awareness of human trafficking, I think it was you. You said that there was a friend whose daughter was being groomed, and then she found out, and then she learned what this stuff looks like, and found out that her daughter was being groomed and stopped it. Was that you that was tweeting that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, it was a father. He had messaged me, and that was very powerful to me, because I've had a lot of survivors that have stepped forward as a result of seeing me on podcasts, but I had never, and this situation was pretty close. Like, just from the way the father described everything, it was, it would have been very close. And he watched the podcast he started being more proactive after following me on Twitter, started digging a little bit deeper, sat down with her, watched one of my podcasts with Chrissy Marr, which is me and Chrissy Marr, she's a comedian,
Yeah, I saw that one.
Well, I've done 3 now, so I don't know which one it was, but he sat down and watched, and she started crying midway through and came and told the truth. Which is very brave. She told the truth, and they were able to have an open conversation, an open dialogue. I can't think of a better ending to that. And now father-daughter got a chance to bond, and we stopped this predator, an adult predator, from getting his daughter to move out of the state.
That is incredible. And that's why it's so important that you get as much exposure as possible, honestly, because it seems like one of the things that allows this to persist is the lack of awareness. I mean, I've heard people blow it up like, oh, that just happens every now and then. People don't know how prevalent it is. So I'm glad that you're out there. Before we go on to the next part of it, I got my first super chat. Chad.
Right from Chad.
Yeah. You popped my super chat cherry. I appreciate it.
I feel semi weird about that. Chad, you and then the cherry pop. I feel like I can consent to this. Okay.
I apologize. I'll do my penance later. I'll do something. I'll do something woke to make up for it.
You're gonna get your penance for the whole weird leaving me sitting here just staring at the screen like
that wasn't my fault. Yeah. So I also wanted to talk about, the fact that people of color, or children who are people of color, are the most vulnerable when it comes to trafficking. Now, I know it involves Black and Latino boys and girls, men and women. And I would assume that would be mostly domestic. So can you give us an idea as to why minority children or adults would be more vulnerable to being trafficked than other races?
Yeah, it's really, it's very unfortunate, and it's not talked about enough. And Jeff and I have gone back and forth about this. I've told Jeff, I don't feel like I'm the best messenger for this, for this message. And he always tells me, no, you talk about it. You talk about it. So I just want to let folks know we had this conversation behind the scenes, and there are a lot of, Black survivors out there that are having this conversation. So I'd encourage you to seek them out as well. They have a lot of amazing survivors that have started organizations and done things like that. So just generally speaking, Black girls specifically are disproportionately affected by this crime. When you look at-risk populations, unfortunately, it just seems to hit a lot more Black girls than anyone else. So when we're talking about folks that are dealing with low income, and this could be rural or urban, and just a lot of the factors that would make someone at risk for trafficking also, unfortunately, disproportionately affects Black girls. And I feel that the best organization and the best pieces that I've seen on this, the Congressional Black Caucus put out a study in collaboration with Rights for Girls last year about Black girls disproportionately being affected by this crime. And I definitely highly recommend folks check that out. Also, I think, was it the Los Angeles Times that just put out the piece?
Yes. I mean, that one was specifically talking about Orange County, but, and that's the thing. A lot of people, Orange County, I'm from Southern California. So Orange County is not necessarily a ghetto area. It's most of it is very affluent. And so if a lot of trafficking is happening there, then I'm thinking, a lot of it is sex trafficking. A lot of it is forced labor, like people working as maids. It happens a lot in Los Angeles as well.
It happens everywhere. It happens everywhere. It can happen anywhere. Globally, of course, Black girls are disproportionately affected by this crime. It kills me that a lot of people are not talking about this. I mean, especially from Nigeria to Italy. It's really, really bad. I implore folks, please check this out. Please look into this. This is very specific nuance. And these survivors and victims are slipping through the cracks, and no one's giving them the voice that they deserve. Netflix, believe it or not, put out a Netflix original called Oluchu. I think it's called Oluchu. It was a movie that was made about human trafficking, Nigerian. It's very gripping, and it's very realistic. I'm speaking from a survivor's perspective. It came out not that long ago. Oluchu. It has a really interesting spelling, but it was so gripping and so realistic that for me personally, as a survivor, it brought back smells. It brought back the feeling. I would highly implore everyone to go watch that. Survivors, maybe pause on that, or if you decide to watch it, have the hotline number handy if you get triggered, or if it brings up some type of past sexual abuse, domestic violence. Please call the hotline, check in with an advocate. That's always something that's available for any survivor of past or recent trauma. You can always call into the hotline, check in, but I feel that really did an amazing, incredible job at encompassing what Black girls are going through when we're talking about human trafficking, especially globally. It is something we have to talk about.
Yeah. And I actually see the numbers here in the article. So, and this was in Orange County again, when they rounded up some traffickers that were operating there, and they rescued, I think, about 300 or 400, and 30% were Black, 30% were Latino, about 19% were white. Asian and Pacific Islanders were about 10%, and then the rest were other or mixed race. You mentioned that
quickly. I'm so sorry. Just so when they interview these traffickers, this is probably one of the most heartbreaking. It's like I don't even want to say it out loud. See, I'm still very careful about this conversation. It's like but one of the things that they found, and actually when I sent this information to Malcolm Flex on Twitter, I sent the information to him, DM'd it to him. I'm always like trying to talk to people about human trafficking. Like, I don't care who you are. I'm not trying to talk about human trafficking.
That's good. Yeah.
I'm an advocate. I'm an activist. But I think what stood out to him, and also one of the things that stood out to myself as well, is that when they interviewed traffickers, they said that they thought that they would be caught less and charged less if they were trafficking Black women as opposed to white women.
The shame about that is that they're probably not wrong. I mean, I wanted to ask you talked about the factors that can lead somebody to be trafficked tend to be more prevalent in minority communities. What are some of those factors that would make anybody more susceptible to being trafficked?
So anyone that struggles with addiction, anyone that is, well, first and foremost, homeless youth, or anyone that's been kicked out of the home. If you're kicked out of the home, or if you're a runaway, you have about 48 hours before you're contacted by a trafficker. This is statistics. So if you're kicked out of the home, or if you're a runaway, those are some of the top things. Anybody that is struggling with substance abuse, anyone that's experiencing homelessness, low income, anyone that's part of the LGBTQ plus community is disproportionately affected by this crime. Indigenous populations, especially Indigenous women and girls, Black and brown girls, and anyone that is immigrant or doesn't speak the language natively. Those are some of the things. Those are some of the most at-risk populations. Wow.
Okay. That's kind of what I figured. And I remember that 48-hour number too. And when I first found that out, like I was perplexed. Like I couldn't believe that. I don't get surprised by much when I'm reading the news because I'm in it all day. But when I found that out, I was like, 48 hours, really?
Well, how is a child going to feed themselves? How are they going to? A child can't walk into a McDonald's and get a job. A child can't even check into a homeless shelter. So if a predator sees a child at a bus stop, you know what I mean? You have to be very specific. How would a child even know to locate a teenage homeless shelter, a shelter that was specifically designed? The shelters, and, I always say, like, folks that serve homeless populations, especially homeless youth or youth that are experiencing homelessness, are like our best friends. Like those are like our biggest helpers, because if we can give these youth that have been kicked out, youth that are runaways, somewhere to go and be around safe adults. And there's other caveats as well. If there's other more at-risk factors, if they come from a home of sexual abuse, if they come home from a home of domestic violence, these all increase the risk factors. It actually is so prevalent that these are the risk factors that I'm almost like a unicorn, because I don't come from, as a survivor. My story does not. My story does not include abuse. My story does not include domestic violence. My story does not include low income. A little bit of substance abuse, but, and mental health as well. When youth are desperate, maybe having mental health issues, or when someone's having mental health issues, they're easy to manipulate. And a predator will find out what those vulnerabilities are, depending on the victim.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So before we move on, I got some more super chats. Amazing. The man, the myth, the legend, Hotep Jesus. My second super chat. This is like a milestone for me. We've got Saul G. Some shekels from my gal El Fuego. All right. Thank you very much, Saul. That's awesome. And we're going to have him on too, because we've got some things to talk about. Mrs. Pinky. I love you, sis. Appreciate it. So I wanted to, let's get into Matt Gaetz. Okay. Now, we talked about this a couple days ago. Have you been able to catch up on it yet, or?
I mean, I've seen some of the Venmo stuff. What do you mean?
Yeah. So that was the last major development. But what do you think is going on here?
So I'm not a court of law, right?
Right.
Let's start off by saying that. And I firmly believe in due process. You can look back on my Twitter, put in @Eliza Bleu and put in the word due process, and you'll see all the times that pop up. I talk about due process. So I don't know whether or not Matt Gaetz has trafficked children. I don't know if he's abused women. I can't speak for that. But what I'm not feeling right now is the hypocrisy, the sheer and utter hypocrisy of everybody that's willing to carry water for a politician that they don't know, that they've never met. These are the same people that will be out here screaming from the rooftops that everybody's connected to Epstein, and everybody, with very little evidence, or, the same amount of evidence that we have against Gaetz. I'll say this: Gaetz' friend was a creep, and I knew about his friend from a while back.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's been a topic. He's definitely been a topic that's come up quite a bit. Just because his specific case has stood out to me, because he's used seeking arrangements, and I was trafficked on seeking arrangements, and because I like to focus a little bit more on the trafficking in tech, his story always stood out.
Seeking arrangements?
Yeah, seeking arrangements is a sugar daddy site. So, and I do believe that willing adult women can have a consensual, sugar daddy relationship, and that It's not trafficking. Unfortunately, in the cases that he was dealing with, we were talking about something very different. But it's kind of like this. If you are going to carry water from Matt Gaetz, don't you think it'd just be better just to sit there and wait for the evidence and wait for things to come out? That's what I didn't like about the Matt Gaetz. I don't know whether or not he's guilty. I don't like to throw out those accusations. I'm pretty fair about stuff. People call Twitter and people that work at Twitter or jack pedos all day in my mentions. I've never called anybody any of that. I'm very careful about what I say about people, because if it was me, I would want somebody to be careful. But what I don't like is everybody out here, the same people that were carrying water from Matt Gaetz are the same ones to jump on and call everything, human trafficking. And what it does is it discredits when survivors step forward, and I've seen some, what's her name? Gosh, she's always ruffling everybody's feathers. Green. What's her name?
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah. She had a tweet. I have no feelings on her really, like just in life. Where I start getting feelings about stuff is when we start talking about human trafficking and child sexual abuse material. I literally like you'll be so peripheral to me. And then when you have human trafficking name in your mouth, then I'm like, oh, okay, it's like waking up the sleeping dragon. Like now you're on my radar. She was out here tweeting about like, how come we haven't seen survivors step forward? We have this many survivors step forward for Cuomo and none have stepped forward. There has been survivors that have stepped forward against Matt Gaetz. And you know what? How dare we live in a society where we expect survivors of human trafficking to step forward? You know what I mean? Like this is not that. And let me tell you, I'm a public survivor, and I would be hard pressed after the last year of being a public survivor to encourage any survivor to step forward. It's been a really difficult year for me. And I would not, and I don't have a public case where I could be killed as a result of speaking out. So that's what we're not going to do. A survivor did testify in front of a grand jury.
Yeah, it's not nearly as easy as people make it out to be. And yes, and the way that showed up in the news was Matt Gaetz is claiming that he's being extorted, and the DOJ official who approached him, who he is accusing of extorting him, provided documentation that at least one of the girls testified. So there could actually be more, and we just don't know about it yet. But it's bothered, the partisanship here has bothered the crap out of me. Now, hyper partisanship already pisses me off, but on an issue like this, like for me, I wrote the article about Matt Gaetz, and I didn't really give much opinion. I just said some things look weird, but at the same time, there can be a deception. But the rest of it was just the facts of the case and what came out. And you wouldn't believe some of the responses I got. I mean, I got emails saying, these are all rumors or whatever. I was like, yeah, I report them as rumors. I acknowledge that they're anonymous. I'm just giving you the facts, and you're getting mad at me because it's the other guy. If Matt Gaetz had a D by his name, they would not have been angry. And I don't even respond to people because I will say some stuff that I will regret.
Two things can be true at once. He can be being extorted, and he can also have done some really bogus things. You do not want to be on the wrong side of history standing up for a predator, and you do not want to be on the wrong side of history standing up for a child predator. And what I don't want to see is you standing up for a child predator and then complaining to everybody about what's going on with the children at the border.
Right. Why? I mean,
and I said this on Hotep Jesus channel, and I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. I'm getting real sick and tired of human trafficking victims and survivors being used for political gains when it's politically convenient. This is not something to be joked about. We saw what happened with Me Too. We're seeing what happens. When it's somebody's guy, everybody wants to stand up for them and carry water. Everybody likes to talk about Bill Clinton's affiliation with Epstein, but then when it comes to something else, nobody wants to talk about it. And it's really disheartening. It's really disheartening for survivors to feel that way. It's really disheartening. It's so ugly out here. Let me tell you how ugly it is out here with this partisanship. It's so ugly out here that when the second survivor of human trafficking stepped forward, when the second minor survivor of human trafficking stepped forward against Twitter, I was begging every journalist and even journalists on the right. And we were saying, my colleague and I were saying, I'm wondering if we can't get anybody to pay attention to John Doe number 2 because of Matt Gaetz. That's how sick it is out here. That is not okay. And it's also the same. I've also feel the same. Sorry, you woke up the sassy pants.
No.
Take off my jacket.
Yeah, that's right. You talk as long as you want.
It's really heartbreaking. Like, are you kidding me? Like, just put that into context, And it's kind of worked the same way where I can barely get anyone that is a mainstream media outlet or anyone that would be left of center publication or news outlet to publish anything about human trafficking because it's seen as this right-wing issue. It's really disheartening. These are real human lives we're talking about, real human lives at stake. If in the case of Matt Gaetz, if there was a minor trafficking victim, if there is a minor trafficking victim, this is a real human life. And by the way, I would like to let everyone know that a 17-year-old who's still in high school does not just get on an airplane and go hang out with politicians, 30-year-old politicians. That would have had to have been a grooming process, at least for a while. And we already know, I mean, so regardless, why are we carrying water? Why don't we just wait to see what's going to happen? But what I don't like is a hypocrisy where people will be screaming out at the border, the children at the border, but then when it's somebody over here, nobody wants to talk about it, but then you want to cry the same about Bill Clinton. I ain't going.
So let me ask you this. I mean, as far as the work you do, how much of an obstacle does the politics make? I mean, how much harder does the state of our politics make your job? I don't know if I worded that right.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, so we have the grant funding, and then we have different areas of focus, on what's important to different politicians. The fact that this is not the number one, the fact that child sexual abuse and child sexual abuse material isn't the number one topic, considering it's a human rights violation against children that's really prevalent in the United States. The fact that every politician isn't talking about this, number one, right out the gate, especially considering the vulnerable populations that it disproportionately affects. The fact that people aren't talking about this blows my mind, just shows you everything that you need to know. I will work with politicians, but everybody has an agenda. So it's really hard. It makes it really, really hard. I wish that this could be the one area that we could all come together and just say, yeah, this is absolutely horrible. Here's a solution. Here's a solution. Here's a solution. Here's a solution. But when we play these party politics with Matt Gaetz or the border or, Epstein or whatever else we're going to play it with that week, it throws us back. It hurts us. And it hurts the victim.
It does, and it should be a no-brainer. I mean, I remember when Jeffrey Epstein, when that story was hot, what were people saying about it? Oh, well, he was friends with Trump. Oh, he was friends with Bill Clinton. And I'm like, wait, what about the girls whose lives were ruined? I mean, this should be. I'm sorry.
Many women. Many.
Yeah, I'm sure many that we don't even know about. Yeah, you might know about, but I mean, because I know you worked with the survivors, but it's just. I don't understand why we're so unaware of what we're doing when we make this issue partisan or when we use it as a political football. With other issues, I don't like it, but it makes more sense. But with this issue, we should all be united on this, regardless of who's doing it.
When we make human trafficking a partisan issue, we are killing innocent people. These are innocent lives. And when we make it, we are wasting time. It's innocent lives. That's how I see. It's like real life death. Life or death is what it is. That's what we're doing. And it's disgusting. That's why I don't have time for it.
Yeah, and you're not exaggerating at all. It is literally life and death for people.
Literally 1,000% life or death.
Yeah.
So we can play these games all day long, but we don't have time. Millions and millions and millions of people's lives are at stake. And we're sitting here splitting hairs about what? That's why I do get frustrated. I do.
Yeah, I can't blame you. Now, somebody asked a question that was very interesting earlier on.
You brought out the real.
I brought the dragon lady out. But this is a good question. Why aren't we teaching kids about this type of grooming in schools? Or are we? Are there schools that are teaching this?
There are some schools that will let it, but generally speaking, it's not allowed to be taught in schools. So this is something that needs to start at home. Unfortunately, a lot of the child sexual abuse happens at home. A lot of the human trafficking happens with folks that are related to the victim. 92% of all victims of human trafficking have a pre-established relationship with their abusers. 90% are of child sexual abuse material. Oh, I was going to add one thing. One thing that was really interesting when I was looking at data was even though Black girls are disproportionately affected by human trafficking, they are not disproportionately affected by child sexual abuse material. So that is one good thing. Okay. It is predominantly white children that are affected by and it definitely happens to Black and brown kids as well. But white kids are disproportionately affected by child sexual abuse material.
Well, why do you think that is?
I don't know. I have no idea. I guess I could hypothesize, and I started going down that rabbit hole one day, but so with my own podcast, I will be interviewing survivors and convicted abusers as well. Might be able to unpack that. Yeah, I might be able to unpack that a little bit more. It'll probably take me a while to come to more conclusions, but that might be partially. I mean, of course, I want to give survivors a voice and an opportunity to be heard, and lift them up and let their experience, strength, and hope sort of let folks know what happened to them and what it was like and what it's like now. But with the abusers, I do want to sort of unpack their life, how they ended up there, the convicted abusers. So jails, prisons, will be where I will be interviewing them. I'm not going to talk to anyone that's free.
Wow.
I'm not going to talk to anyone that's free, but just really unpack and see what in their life took them to being abusers. Maybe we can get to understand the crime a little bit better and get to understand the psyche of abusers as well. So maybe in that journey, so I'll be talking to convicted traffickers, pimps, pedophiles. And of course, in there, I'll be talking to folks that have made child sexual abuse material. So maybe in there, I'll be able to unpack it a little bit more.
Wow. Yeah, I'll be looking forward to seeing that, because you're a better person than I am, because I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, we'll see. I know already I'm going to get a lot of backlash. People are going to say, oh, why are you platforming these people? But I am so desperate. I care so much about this. And I want to stop it from happening as much. I want this to be a podcast where you could sit and watch it with your children and say okay, really, and parents can watch and say, okay, we're looking for this. This is what happened. More of an educational tool, not to platform abusers, but to understand the nuance of the crime. I understand so much. I'm willing to go. I want to understand the crime so well that I'm willing to go to the ends of the earth to get some information.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it, I mean, if people can interview serial killers, I mean, there shouldn't be a problem with this, especially since you mentioned this before. The best way to deal with this is prevention. You're not really going to be able to get a lot of them out, but you can do a hell of a lot of prevention, and this would go towards that. So I don't see any issue with it.
Yeah, prevention is really key. That is very key. And I hope that we get to a place where we can teach this in schools. Believe it or not, the youth are really receptive to it, but it has to be presented in a way where it's not corny and not like pearl clutching. There's a way to present it.
Mm-hmm. Now you said that they can't teach it in schools. Are they not allowed to, or do they just not want to, or they
can? But it's sort of like where I kind of look at it right now is sort of like the beginning stages of like sex ed, when they started teaching sex ed in school. It's like sometimes, people don't want it. They don't even want those ideas put in. I don't know what it is, but I feel that it's something that should be taught in every school.
Sure.
Frequently, like every day.
I don't see why not? Yeah. I mean, they need to know.
Also for counselors and teachers to let children know I'm a safe person. If something happens, if something's going on at home, if you are in contact with someone online and you don't feel comfortable talking to your parents about this, then, I'm a safe person. Opening that door.
Yeah, I mean, it's necessary. I mean, it's just like you said, these are human lives that can be lost. But if there's some prevention where the kids know what to look for, where the parents know what to look for, where the teachers know what to look for, counselors, you're going to save lives. So it's amazing to me that this isn't a thing already. I mean, see, this is why I stopped talking about human trafficking in the first place, because I get really pissed off about it. Like, this isn't hard. I mean, I don't get why this is so hard for people.
Well, it's only been illegal in the United States for just shy of 20 years. So to traffic. I feel like we're so when I look at the human trafficking survivor space, I really try to look back and see what happened with the domestic violence movement. The domestic violence was originally called the battered women's movement. And I've seen how long it's taken them to make progress. And then I have also spent some time with one of the founders. One of the founders was one of my early mentors of the battered women's movement from the 80s, from Minneapolis. And I asked her, where would you like to go back and change things? Where what didn't work, what wasn't helpful, and looking at what they went through. I am mirroring quite a bit what they went through to what the human trafficking survivor space and the movement here, the anti-human trafficking movement, is doing. Believe it or not, we're actually pretty much right on track. It takes a long time. This is an ugly reality. Nobody wants to look at it. The Epstein case definitely blew the lid off a lot of things. So now it's just up to folks like us to keep the momentum going and to keep those facts. The good news is that the Human Trafficking Hotline has been collecting data and statistics for well over 10 years. So if anyone ever has a question about anything, actually they did a really interesting report too about how COVID-19 disproportionately affected Black women as well, and the ramifications on human trafficking and Black women as well.
Gotcha. Okay. So I want to transition. I want to talk about Twitter, but really quick, I got another super chat from Greg. Eliza Bleu is a good soul. Happy to support her work. Amen.
Woohoo, I fooled somebody.
Excellent. I got another one that I have to put up here because it's the truth. MTG is a clown. Yes, she is. Barnum and Bailey. I'm sorry, she is. I'm not a fan of Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm just going to put it out there. And now,
I'll say this. I tend to, I'm kind of weird. So like, if somebody's ruffling everybody's feathers, I kind of tend to like that, like just in general, like, okay, if you're making everyone mad, I want to see what's really going on over there. But I have not really looked into anything that she's done as far as something positive. Like I've never heard a positive change, but that doesn't mean it isn't out there.
Oh no, she's never done anything yet. She filed articles of impeachment against Biden. That's what she did. I don't want to get started on MTG because I can go on and on and on.
Sorry.
But I'll just say that what you said about her earlier, the way that she was using the trafficking issue, I'm not surprised.
That made me feel away. I came out of pocket. I never really come out of pocket too much on Twitter. I can kind of keep my cool. But I was really up on the underneath her post. Like I wrote the second draft of the Bible underneath that one. But I didn't come out of pocket. I just really wrote that would be that's really horrible way to talk about potential victims or to really sort of egg victims on to step forward in the public eye, and sort of the ramifications that being a public survivor has had on my life. And I mean, I've seen some of the ramifications, it is life or death for us public survivors. The Epstein survivors, folks that come out and speak out against politicians or high profile people, the elites, whatever, that is like legit life or death. So it's not a funny thing to joke about, like, oh, well, Cuomo had all this and blah, blah, blah. Those survivors' choice. Those survivors, we should have an environment where survivors feel like they can come forward. If a survivor doesn't feel comfortable, that's when they have an advocate like myself or, an advocate locally almost speak on their behalf. That's part of what an advocate does.
Gotcha. Cody, another super chat, $4.99. Thank you, Hotep and Bill. Yeah. This one is a little bit too true. Politicians care more about Dr. Seuss and Mr. Potato Head than human trafficking. Ouch. It's true.
I can't lie.
Yeah.
That's the tweet.
Yeah, it is. Wait, I didn't know I clicked the wrong one. Oh, God. Since human trafficking affects Black women the most, is Candace Owens outspoken on the issue as a Black conservative, or if Cardi B's WAP is really what's hurting Black women? That's a good point. I'm just going to leave that there.
Well, actually, no, that is a great point, and I definitely hope. Okay. So let's unpack that just a little bit, because there was some
as
meat.
long as you're talking about it.
There was some meat there. So no pun intended. Talking about WAP and meat.
I think you're thinking of fapping.
Anyway, so so Candace has highlighted human trafficking. She had on Tim Ballard from Our Rescue. She has talked about human trafficking. I do kind of have some bones to pick with the way Candace delivers conversations around slavery. She definitely sometimes touches on the fact that everybody in the United States is free and things like that. Wow, what a heartbreaking thing for a survivor of human trafficking to hear, especially when they're being coerced and might not have that freedom. I wish that, and I'm not trying to be language police, but it would be really awesome if she would integrate the facts about human trafficking and how it disproportionately affects Black girls into her conversations. She has an amazing platform. Once again, I really have no feeling about her. I know people getting their feelings about her. I don't really, but I do wish that she would talk about this, especially being a Black woman, and maybe even have on a Black survivor of human trafficking and share the experience of what that was like in the United States. I think that would be a really powerful interview, really powerful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I am glad to hear that she actually had somebody on her show that was talking about it. That's good. I will give her props for that. I will give her a round of applause because there aren't enough people talking about this.
She did, but I feel that the survivors' voices are what needs to be heard. I'm not speaking about myself. I mean, if I wanted to book an interview with Candace, I'm not trying to say it's not that beyond the pale,
Right.
especially these days. You know what I mean? She has her thing with the Daily Wire. I just had the piece with Amanda come out in the Daily Wire today. It's not that beyond the pale. But I would like I think it would be a really powerful interview for her to sit down with a Black survivor of human trafficking and speak, woman survivor, and speak about what that was like in the United States. I've also seen some just not statistically factual. I saw a politician, I forget exactly who it was, but just not a statistically factual comments about human trafficking. I think that it's easy for, I'm just going to throw it out there, conservatives to point a finger at the border and to ignore what's going on in our backyard. Wow, you want to talk about disingenuous and turning our back on victims in the United States. 77%. So we're saying, let's look at what's going on at the border, but we're turning a blind eye to the big elephant in the room in our backyard. It's not how it works.
Yeah, I mean, and I think honestly, people don't know that it's 77%. I think people just assume that it's just people at the border and that's it. And I think that's why this is so important, what you're doing, because you can educate people, and you are educating people.
That's deadly too. And let me tell you why. Because when a survivor only sees imagery with children with duct tapes on their mouth, imagery with ropes around their wrist, imagery with chains, imagery of semis, imagery of border crossing, or thinking of it only happens to immigrants, or, when folks see that, then survivors from within the United States or folks that identify as survivors don't step forward, and they could die in that lifestyle. And I know, because I was one of them. This is getting survivors of human trafficking to self-identify, because now they think, okay, it only happens to Epstein. It only happens across the border. It only happens with a semi. It only happens with chains. I never had chains around my wrist. I would have died in that lifestyle if I hadn't stepped forward. I would have died there. And what a travesty that would have been. It really would have. Yeah. And so what we need to do is keep the conversation as factual as possible, so that as many survivors have an opportunity to step forward as possible and receive the healing that they deserve.
Definitely. And that kind of brings us into Twitter. I mean, because people are being victimized on Twitter. And you mentioned, the second John Doe that signed on to the lawsuit isn't getting much press. I mean, I wrote about it when you told me about it, and I saw Daily Wire did something on it, and I think I saw one other. But before we even get into it, just kind of remind people of what that lawsuit is about.
Yeah, definitely. So John Doe is a survivor of child sexual exploitation and child sexual abuse material. His abuse was watched over 160,000 times in the first day on Twitter, with over 2,000 retweets. That's a lot. That's a lot of retweets, and that's a lot of views. He reached out to Twitter multiple times, provided photo identification, government photo identification. He was 13 years old in the video. John Doe just turned of age. So up until this point, he was a minor still. After he was reaching out to Twitter, please take this down, please take this down. Twitter said after review, it did not violate Twitter's terms of service.
And this happened multiple times, right?
Homeland Security stepping in for them to finally take it down. So that's John Doe 1. Unfortunately, there was a second survivor in the video, John Doe 2. John Doe 2 originally wasn't part of the Twitter lawsuit. John Doe number 2 has stepped forward. John Doe 1 and John Doe 2 were both 13 years old in the video.
Okay, I didn't realize that John Doe 2 was in the same video. I thought it was a different one.
John Doe 2 is in the same video. So John Doe 1 was standing up for John Doe 1 and John Doe 2 when he was reaching out to Twitter, trying to get this down. This young man was suicidal at the time. And Twitter not only turned a blind eye, they said, we're not going to take it down. Twitter knowingly profited off of John Doe 1 and John Doe 2's child sexual abuse material. There's no reason that this video should have been on Twitter, and they are suing. The wildest part is that Twitter has already tried to have the case dismissed, citing Section 230 protection. But in this case, it will not work because of FOSTA SESTA amendment signed into effect in 2018. It's Stop Enabling Sex Trafficking Act. And I think these young men are very brave. I will say this. They are willing to take on big tech. They're willing to take on Twitter. And I cannot believe their bravery. Every day, that's why I keep John Doe as my, hope I don't get emotional, as my pin tweet. I just don't want to forget. I mean, the fact that they wrote him back. Sorry. You'd think after all these months, I'd be like used to the story. The fact that they wrote him back and told him that it didn't violate their terms of service and that they weren't going to remove it, I think is the most jarring and unbelievable part to me. And that is the pill I'm unwilling to swallow. I cannot believe it. These are adults running this platform. They know better.
That was honestly the most shocking part of that story to me. I mean, unfortunately, the fact that there was child porn on Twitter didn't surprise me. The fact that they refused to take it down after being asked multiple times, and they said it didn't violate their terms and conditions. Did they even give an explanation as to why it didn't violate their terms and conditions?
Twitter's excuse is that there's so much child sexual abuse material on the platform that they couldn't possibly manage to take it all down.
That was their excuse for trying to file to try to dismiss the suit because of Section 230. I wrote about that too. But to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong.
If you cannot have a social media platform if you cannot run a social media platform that cannot be free of child sexual abuse material, then you need to sit down. This is a human rights violation. These young men's whole life has been altered. And this case, already the buildup to the fact that they moved to dismiss, moving ahead, we're anticipating more motions to dismiss. These young men, they've been through so much. I can't believe that Twitter is doing this again. And I can't believe that they said out loud as part of their defense that they are so much child sexual abuse material that they can't possibly remove it all. If that's the case, then maybe you shouldn't have a platform.
Well, I mean, and you've told me that there are ways that they can remove this stuff. Like you've told me that the technology exists. Why aren't they using it? Or what's her excuse?
They don't have one. I mean, it would be one thing if John Doe 1 and John Doe 2 were alone, but they're not. They're two young men amongst many. John Doe 1 and John Doe 2's lawyer have evidence that over 10,000 child sexual abuse material lives on Twitter after being reported and not being taken down. They've reported so much child sexual abuse material from their platform. So there's a lot to unpack there. Like the first thing is that they're using Microsoft Photo DNA, which was designed in 2009, that can really only detect toddler and younger. And it can only detect toddler and younger and anyone that's already in the system. So only if it's already in it, the image, and it's only images, not videos. So the image has to already be in the system and fingerprinted. They all have a special fingerprint. Then they get run through Twitter does have some technology that they've used on their own, but it's so low on the totem pole for them. But just to give folks an idea of how bad the problem is, Russia said that they are no longer allowed to be in their country unless they deal with their child sexual abuse problem within the next few weeks. I think we're down to like maybe 2 weeks before Russia is completely Twitter, and when we think about just globally what that means for us as far as sharing information, talking about news, Russia's a powerful player for us not to be able to talk to them on Twitter. That's scary. They won't remove the child sexual abuse material. The entire country of Canada came out with an awareness campaign for Twitter's birthday. Ricky Martin. I mean, this isn't so. It sounds wild that I'm constantly talking about this. The New York Times has done extensive reporting on the child sexual abuse material. In 2020, there were 65 million child sexual abuse material images and videos reported to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. 95% of those images and videos came from Facebook. Facebook-owned platforms like Instagram. Unfortunately, that means that Facebook is doing the best. Facebook is doing the best. It's so bad that children were selling themselves in the Philippines, and the Philippine government came out and made a statement about it. The children in the Philippines were selling images and videos of themselves over Christmas. They called it Christmas sale.
I remember you telling me about that. I mean, that was even more disturbing, especially since they can't. They're minors, so they can't consent.
They cannot consent. They cannot consent. And the fact that there's a market and that they know how to access it is scary, And so everybody's always like, "Oh, are you trying to cancel Twitter? Are you trying to?" No, I love Twitter. Kidding me? I'm on it constantly. Twitter's like my I love Twitter. I would be so bummed if they took down Twitter, especially considering one of these days Kanye West is definitely going to come back on Twitter, and I would hate to miss that. But I just want them to fix the problem. I just want them to work with the technology that's available. There is a lot of technology, and I always want folks in tech to stand up and to really work together to solve this issue. I feel that it is solvable. The only problem is we're going to run into end-to-end encryption. Twitter's making a new platform that'll be fully encrypted. It's a whole mess. Same thing with Facebook. Once we move fully to end-to-end encryption, although it'll be great for a lot of people that are about liberty and don't want anybody in your business, it will be deadly and horrible when it comes to child sexual abuse.
That's horrible. I mean, because the thing is that I understand if they were actually trying, there will be stuff that slips through the cracks. But in this case, it was brought to their attention. That's what gets me about it. And that's why it doesn't seem like that Section 230 would cover it, because it's not like they missed it. They saw it because it was brought to their attention, which tells me that they don't care. They don't take this seriously. This isn't a case where they tried to get as much as they could and they just missed it, but then somebody brought it up and then they removed it. They refused to remove it. They defended the child porn. And I keep asking you why they would even take that stance, because I can't get my mind around it. But how do you think this lawsuit is going to affect things? How do you think this is going to turn out?
How do I want it to turn out, or how do I think it's going to turn out?
Both. I think I already know how you want it to turn out, but yeah, give me both.
Well, I think that Twitter will drag their feet for as long as possible. I think that they will dismiss it as much as possible. And I am terrified that a judge somewhere will be paid off, and it will be, there's so many shady things that go on out here in the world. What I hope happens is that John Doe 1 and John Doe 2 are cut a big fat check so that they can go to college and live the life of their dreams that they deserve. I mean, the prolonged effects on their mental health is really tragic. And I want them to receive justice. But not only do I want the dose, John Doe 1 and John Doe 2, to receive justice, I also want Twitter to change. And that would be the ideal. Twitter has the ability and the opportunity to set the standard across the entire internet. If they took Russia seriously and said, yeah, we want to still be in Russia, like maybe we should just clean up the child sexual abuse material. Wow, we should listen to Canada and say, hey, yeah, let's clean up the child sexual abuse material. But ultimately, this is a United States company. And it behooves on us to continuously put pressure on them. Regardless of whatever happens in this case, I'm not going to shut up about it. And I can guarantee you this, by the time this case is done, I will make sure every human possible has heard about what they have done and what they continue to do.
Do you think that, if it goes your way and they end up having to pay a huge check, beyond that, do you think that other legal actions might follow, or would this alone be enough to make them change their ways? Or how long do you think this battle is going to take?
Years. And it could get worse. It could get really ugly. That's why I would highly encourage them to change it while they still can.
Good. Enough said. Mic drop. I mean, because, and especially with the more of the people that find out about this, I mean, we talked earlier about how everybody's getting political about it, but a lot of people aren't. I mean, a lot of people on the left and the right, doesn't matter what their political affiliation is. If they knew what was going on, I mean, the amount of pressure that they could bring to bear, and also even other victims coming out. I mean, if more people are aware of this, I don't see Twitter or Facebook or other social media companies getting away with it for, at least not forever. But like you said, I think it'll take some years to really push them into doing it. It just sucks that they won't do them.
Cut a check and call it a day. They could cut a check and call it a day. But I've said this before in interviews, and I'll say it again, that every day that platforms like Pornhub and Twitter drag this out, it gives advocates like myself and journalists more time to get the message out there, and it gives more time for survivors to step forward. That is the only good thing about them dragging their feet, is that it gives more survivors an opportunity to say, oh, wow, that is what happened to me. And wow, I can maybe receive some justice. If you are a survivor of Twitter, you can definitely reach out to the National Center on Sexual Exploitation Law. They are the law group, along with Lisa Haba, that are representing John Doe 1 and John Doe 2. They also represent some of the Pornhub survivors. Lisa Haba represents the Peter Nygaard survivors, or a large chunk of the Peter Nygaard survivors. But definitely think about getting some justice. You have rights in the United States, and you should seek out what that would look like moving forward for you, if and when you're ready. I would encourage you, if you've been sexually exploited on these platforms, to do it the sooner than the later, because there are, rules about when things happen. But that is an option for survivors. And I think, trust me, Twitter's going to wish they hadn't. If they don't already, I mean, they will wish they hadn't. Yeah, we'll leave it there.
Okay, good. Now, before we close out, is there anything that I didn't bring up that you want to talk about or address, even if it's short or long, whatever?
Well, I was really hoping that maybe your feed would cut out, so I'd be sitting here looking crazy again.
Well, you had my platform by yourself for a few minutes, so and you probably did better than I would have done.
The playback is going to be so freaking embarrassing. I was like so awkward, because I was like, oh my gosh, who knows what I did? Who cares? Whatever. I'm at the point now where I feel like I've done so many, like before, when I first started, I'd always have on like a blazer and try to be all, now I'm like just rolling up in a t-shirt. Next week, I'm going to be in my pajamas or whatever. But no, I really appreciate the support. And, I just always encourage folks to check out, the National Human Trafficking Hotline for up-to-date information. Same thing with conspiracy theories or myths. They go over myths. So if something's a question, if you have a question about human trafficking, you can always ask it there, or they could have already answered it. You can write into the Human Trafficking Hotline and just see what they have to say. That's going to be the #1 spot for all of the information. And also, folks always want to know how they can get involved. There's also a directory on the human trafficking hotline that will list all of the organizations. Look up an organization in your area. You could just put, human trafficking survivor safe house in your area or your zip code. Look for a place that's in your area. That's one thing that's a little different. I don't hustle for like one specific organization. I always tell folks like, donate in your area. Donate your time, talent, or treasure in your own area to a safe house that's locally. Doesn't mean you have to serve survivors, but it means if you call them up and say, hey, what do you need? You could drop off a gift card to the local, to a grocery store so that they can feed folks for a while, maybe buy some backpacks for back to school. There's always needs there. And if you have a special skill, think about donating some time with that special skill to serve survivors of human trafficking.
Awesome. Great. And let people know where they can find you and where they can support you.
So you can always find me for now until I'm banned. Who knows? Who knows how long it's going to be? It's like a gift every time I try to go into Twitter, like, am I banned today or suspended or what nonsense is being pulled today? So you can find me on Twitter at Eliza Bleu, at ELIZABLEU. And then we're both on Locals.
Mm-hmm.
The best. Mm-hmm.
Give me your Locals link.
Okay. Well, you can always find me on Locals. I love Locals so much. That's actually my favorite ideal platform on the internet. It has become, I actually almost feel like sometimes I check Locals more than I check Twitter. So can you believe that? I just like more. I just like it a bit more. It's more my speed. In my case, it's Eliza, ELIZA.locals.com. If somebody likes me, if they want to see me go, like keep my mission going, and if you like my energy, I've never sold out, never sold a tweet, never sold a thought. If you like me and you like my energy, please consider donating to my Locals community. I do blog there. I haven't blogged in a while. There's some other things going on, and that will be more public soon. Why I haven't been blogging as much. But you could donate to me there. And then I like to pop in the other communities as well. Jeff has a community.
Yes, I do. Jeff has
a community.
Perspective.locals.com. But definitely join Eliza's community because she's going to do some awesome things. I'm telling all of you to go there right now. Don't consider it. Do it. Eliza.locals.com.
The cool thing about Locals is you can like creep for free. It's not like you got to pay to do it. If you want to participate in the conversation, but a lot of people I've noticed use my Locals as a way to donate to my mission. And honestly, that's really helped me out a lot. There were a couple times in 2020 where I was about to just fully give up and take on, part-time jobs or whatever. It's because of the donations that have come through my Locals community that I've been able to continue to do all this stuff. I don't think people realize the bulk of what I do is for free. So, right. I mean, like this weekend, me contacting journalists, I was actually off work today. That's why I was able to schedule a couple podcasts. I was still working today, until I made sure John Doe 2 had got some press. People don't really understand, but I was just thinking like, well, if I was John Doe 2's mother, I would be pretty bummed out that nobody in the press wanted to talk about the fact that my son was exploited on Twitter and they did nothing about it, sexually exploited as a minor. So, so people don't know I do a lot for free.
Right.
Free.
Gotcha. Well, I want to thank everybody for showing up. Please share and subscribe to this video. And I appreciate you, Eliza, for showing up. And until next time, everybody, keep your minds free.